In the shadows of New York City, power is never given, it's taken. The streets echo with whispers of deals struck in the dark, alliances forged in blood, and names that still send shivers down the spines of those who dare to remember. Before the Gambino name became a symbol of fear and respect, a storm was brewing, born from the old world traditions of Sicily and nurtured in the heart of America's most ruthless city. This is the origin of a power that would rise to define the true face of the American Mafia. The Gambino crime family is one of the most infamous organized crime syndicates in the history of the United States. As one of the notorious 5 families that dominated the mafia underworld in New York City, the Gambino family has been linked to numerous illegal activities, ranging from extortion and loan sharking to drug trafficking and murder. But before this powerful crime organization became known as the Gambino family, it had a different name, different leaders, and a different path to power. The roots of the Gambino family stretch back to the early 1900s, long before it adopted the name of its most famous boss, Carlo Gambino. This is a story of power, betrayal, and the rise of a criminal empire that began with the arrival of Sicilian mafiosi on American shores. It's a tale that takes us from the crowded streets of Manhattan's Little Italy to the backroom dealings of mob bosses vying for control of New York's lucrative underworld. In this video, we'll journey through the early history of what would later become the Gambino crime family. We'll explore the roles played by key figures like Ignazio the Wolf Lupo, Giuseppe Morello, and Salvatore D'Aquila. We'll witness the bloody Castellamarese War that reshaped the mafia landscape in America, and we'll follow the rise of Vincent Mangano and Albert Anastasia, whose actions set the stage for the ultimate ascension of Carlo Gambino. Join us as we uncover the untold origins of the Gambino crime family, revealing how it evolved from its humble beginnings to become one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. This is the story of the men who paved the way for the Gambino name to become synonymous with organized crime in America. To understand the origins of the Gambino crime family, we must first look back to the rugged hills of Sicily, where the seeds of the American Mafia were sown. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Sicilian families were bound by honor, loyalty, and secrecy, traditions that would later be carried across the Atlantic Ocean. Amidst poverty and oppression, the Sicilian Mafia, known as La Cosa Nostra, became a powerful force, providing protection and justice outside the corrupt government's reach. By the early 20th century, waves of Sicilian immigrants arrived in New York City, bringing with them their customs, culture, and secret societies. These neighborhoods, like Manhattan's Little Italy, became fertile ground for the traditions and operations of the mafia. Here, amidst the bustling markets and crowded tenements, these men began to establish their networks, mirroring the hierarchy and operations from back home. 2 men, Ignazio the Wolf Lupo and Giuseppe Morello, emerged as influential figures in these early mafia circles. Lupo, infamous for his ruthlessness, controlled extortion rackets, demanding protection payments from local businesses. Morello, easily recognized by his claw-like hand, was a mastermind of counterfeiting operations, producing fake currency that flooded the city. Together, their partnership established the first significant organized crime network in New York, extending their influence through a web of illegal enterprises. However, their quest for dominance was not without opposition. Rising figures like Salvatore D'Aquila sought to expand their own power, challenging existing leaders and attempting to unify the fragmented criminal enterprises under his command. D'Aquila's ambition marked the beginning of a shift towards more structured families, each vying for control over territories and illegal operations in the city. This struggle for supremacy among early mafia leaders would set the stage for the organized crime syndicates that would soon dominate New York's underworld. As these early leaders fought for control, New York's underworld grew increasingly volatile. It was a time of shifting alliances, betrayals, and ruthless ambition, a period that set the stage for a bloody conflict. This era of intense rivalry and violence would eventually lead to a war that reshaped the landscape of organized crime, laying the foundation for the families that would come to dominate the city. As New York's mafia landscape grew more complex, power struggles became inevitable. By the late 1920s, tensions between two major factions reached a boiling point, culminating in a bloody conflict known as the Castellamarese War. Named after the town of Castellammare del Golfo in Sicily, this war pitted the older Sicilian faction, led by Joe the Boss Masseria, against a rival group of younger, more ambitious mobsters headed by Salvatore Maranzano. Masseria and Maranzano, both seeking to become the supreme leader of the mafia in New York, commanded loyalty from different factions. Masseria represented the old guard who adhered to traditional Sicilian customs. Maranzano, on the other hand, envisioned a more organized and hierarchical structure, similar to that of ancient Roman legions, and sought to modernize their criminal enterprises. This clash of ideals and ambition led to a brutal and violent power struggle that left bodies on the streets and fear in the hearts of many. As the war raged on, both sides sought to consolidate power by eliminating rivals. This period was marked by alliances and betrayals, with many switching sides to ensure their survival. The turning point came when Lucky Luciano, a shrewd and calculating mobster allied with Masseria, saw an opportunity to end the conflict and reshape the mafia landscape. Luciano secretly met with Maranzano, betraying Masseria and orchestrating his assassination. On April 15, 1931, Masseria was shot to death in a restaurant, marking the end of his reign and shifting the balance of power. With Masseria gone, Maranzano declared himself capo di tutti i capi, the boss of all bosses. He set about organizing the mafia into 5 separate families, each with its own territory and operations, but still under his supreme authority. Maranzano's vision was to create a structured organization that would reduce conflict and increase profits. However, his reign would be short-lived. Luciano, fearing Salvatore Maranzano's growing power and ambition, orchestrated another betrayal. In September 1931, Maranzano was killed, paving the way for Luciano to implement his own vision of organized crime without a single boss of bosses, but rather a commission that would oversee mafia activities and resolve disputes. The Castellamarese War not only reshaped the mafia's power structure, but also marked the beginning of a new era of organized crime in New York. The creation of the 5 families, each with defined territories and leadership, brought a semblance of order to the chaotic underworld. This new organization would become the foundation upon which New York's most notorious crime families would build their power and legacy. With the dust settling after the Castellamarese War, the mafia families of New York found themselves in a new era of structured hierarchy and relative peace. Among the rising figures in this restructured underworld was a young Sicilian immigrant who had quickly adapted to the ways of American organized crime. His name was Carlo Gambino, a name that would soon become synonymous with power, cunning, and the rise of one of the most influential crime families in history. Born on August 24, 1902, in Palermo, Sicily, Carlo Gambino was introduced to mafia life from an early age. Growing up in a culture where the mafia wielded significant influence, he quickly absorbed the values of loyalty, secrecy, and power. In 1921, at the age of 19, Gambino emigrated to the United States, joining relatives already involved in criminal activities. He settled in Brooklyn, a hotbed for mafia operations, and swiftly made a name for himself as a reliable enforcer and savvy operator. Gambino aligned himself with his cousins, the Castellanos, who were well established in the local underworld. By the time of the Castellamarese War, Gambino was already a trusted ally of Salvatore d'Aquila's successor, Vincent Mangano, one of the newly appointed bosses in the 5 families. This connection placed him in the perfect position to rise through the ranks, especially under the leadership of Frank Scalisi, a key figure in Mangano's organization. Gambino's ability to navigate the complex world of organized crime was unmatched. He was known for his calm demeanor, strategic thinking, and ability to forge alliances. Rather than using brute force, Gambino preferred to maneuver behind the scenes, using diplomacy and calculated tactics. His methodical approach earned him respect and influence, making him a key figure in Mangano's operations, particularly in controlling illicit businesses such as bootlegging, loansharking, and illegal gambling. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Gambino's power and influence continued to grow. His reputation as a loyal and capable mobster caught the attention of powerful allies, including Vito Genovese and Albert Anastasia. As the landscape of organized crime evolved, Gambino's patience and cunning placed him in a position to seize opportunities that others overlooked. His careful cultivation of relationships within the mafia families would soon pave the way for his rise to power, setting the stage for a new era in the history of organized crime. However, by the mid-1930s, Charles Lucky Luciano had been imprisoned, and Frank Costello took control, leading the family in new directions. By the early 1950s, the landscape of New York's underworld was shifting once again. Internal power struggles and the ambitions of younger, more ruthless mobsters were beginning to change the dynamics within the mafia families. In the Mangano crime family, tensions were rising between the reserved and traditional boss, Vincent Mangano, and his hot-headed underboss, Albert Anastasia. These tensions would soon explode into violence, reshaping the hierarchy of the mafia and paving the way for the rise of Carlo Gambino. Albert Anastasia, known as the Mad Hatter, was feared for his violent tendencies and his control over Murder Incorporated, the mafia's enforcement arm responsible for countless assassinations. His ambition and thirst for power put him at odds with Vincent Mangano, who had grown increasingly distrustful of his underboss. The relationship between the two deteriorated, marked by heated arguments and open hostility. Mangano, a traditionalist, viewed Anastasia's methods as reckless and dangerous, while Anastasia saw Mangano as a barrier to his own rise to power. In April 1951, the simmering conflict came to a head. Vincent Mangano disappeared without a trace, and his brother, Philip Mangano, was found dead shortly thereafter. Although no one was ever charged, it was widely believed that Albert Anastasia was behind the hits, effectively removing the last obstacles to his takeover of the crime family. With Mangano out of the picture, Anastasia seized control, becoming the new boss and renaming the organization the Anastasia Crime Family. His rise marked a turning point as the family became more aggressive and ruthless under his command. Albert Anastasia's rule was characterized by fear and intimidation, but his brutal tactics and insatiable desire for power would ultimately be his downfall. As Anastasia tightened his grip on the organization, Carlo Gambino, now serving as Anastasia's underboss, watched carefully. Gambino was patient, shrewd, and willing to wait for the right moment to assert his influence. While Albert Anastasia was feared as the Lord High Executioner, Carlo Gambino's influence and power were growing in the shadows. His ability to maneuver quietly and his foresight in making strategic alliances would soon place him at the helm of the organization. The era of overt violence and public brutality was coming to an end, making way for a new kind of leadership, one that valued discretion, profit, and the art of survival in the mafia's intricate power games. By 1957, the mafia world in New York was a powder keg of ambition, rivalry, and fear. Vito Genovese, a powerful and cunning mafioso, had narrowly failed in his attempt to kill his rival, Frank Costello. Although Costello survived, the botched assassination left Vito Genovese exposed and fearful of retribution. One man stood in his way, Albert Anastasia, the notoriously violent head of the crime family bearing his name. Anastasia, loyal to Costello and known for his ruthless enforcement of mafia law, posed a direct threat to Vito Genovese's aspirations. To carry out the hit, Genovese turned to Carlo Gambino, Anastasia's underboss, who harbored his own desires for power. Gambino, known for his cunning and patience, saw an opportunity to rise to the top by aligning himself with Vito. With a shared interest in removing Anastasia, the two men orchestrated a plan that would send shockwaves through the criminal underworld. On the morning of October 25, 1957, Albert Anastasia entered the barbershop of the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan, his guard down, believing he was safe. As he settled into the barber's chair, two gunmen, their faces covered, burst into the room and opened fire. Anastasia, taken completely by surprise, had no chance to react. Within seconds, the Lord High Executioner was dead. The assassination of Albert Anastasia sent shockwaves throughout the mafia and law enforcement alike. It was a bold, brazen act that marked the end of an era defined by open displays of power and violence. In the wake of Anastasia's death, Carlo Gambino quickly moved to consolidate his control over the organization. Under Gambino's leadership, the crime family was rebranded as the Gambino crime family, reflecting his dominance and strategic vision. Gambino's rise marked a shift in mafia leadership style, from the raw brutality of Anastasia to Gambino's preference for quiet manipulation, strategic alliances, and calculated business ventures. His leadership would redefine the mafia, ushering in an era of unprecedented growth and influence. Gambino's methods ensured the family's success and stability, making it one of the most powerful criminal organizations in America. The assassination of Albert Anastasia was not just the end of a violent era, it was the beginning of a legacy that would endure for decades. Gambino's rise to power marked a turning point in the history of organized crime, solidifying his name as one of the most influential figures in mafia history. With Carlo Gambino at the helm, the Gambino crime family made significant strides, integrating deeply into both criminal and legitimate enterprises. The family expanded its influence into various industries, demonstrating a remarkable ability to blend into the fabric of New York's business landscape while continuing its illicit operations. The 1960s and 1970s saw the Gambino family diversifying its criminal portfolio. They controlled extensive operations in loan sharking, extortion, and drug trafficking, while also exerting influence over labor unions and construction projects. This diversification helped shield the family from the intense scrutiny faced by other crime organizations. After Carlo Gambino's death in 1976, Paul Castellano, his cousin and chosen successor, took control of the family. Known for his preference for business over street crime, Castellano sought to steer the family towards more sophisticated, white-collar criminal activities. However, his leadership style and focus on wealth alienated many of the family's traditional street-level operatives. Castellano's leadership was not without controversy. His emphasis on white-collar crimes and detachment from the day-to-day operations of the family led to rising tensions. Many of the Gambino family's capos and soldiers, including John Gotti, grew increasingly dissatisfied, viewing Castellano as out of touch with the family's core values and the realities of their criminal enterprises. In December 1985, the power struggle came to a head. Outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan, Paul Castellano was ambushed and gunned down in a well-orchestrated hit. The assassination sent shockwaves through the mafia and was seen as a direct challenge to the established order. John Gotti, a charismatic and ambitious capo, was widely believed to be behind the murder, effectively paving his way to the top. John Gotti's ascent marked a new era for the Gambino family. Known for his flamboyant style and media savvy, Gotti quickly became a public figure, earning nicknames like the Dapper Don for his fashion sense and the Teflon Don for his ability to avoid convictions. His leadership, however, brought more than just notoriety. It also led to increased scrutiny from law enforcement and heightened tensions within the mafia. Gotti's reign brought a mix of glamour and danger to the Gambino family. While his charisma and public image captured headlines, his leadership style exposed the family to unprecedented legal pressures. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies doubled their efforts to bring down Gotti and the Gambino organization, leading to a series of trials that would eventually culminate in his downfall. By the late 1980s, John Gotti's high-profile lifestyle and blatant disregard for secrecy had put the Gambino crime family under intense scrutiny. The FBI, determined to bring down the so-called Teflon Don, ramped up their efforts, launching extensive surveillance operations and leveraging new technological advances to gather evidence against Gotti and his associates. In December 1990, the FBI's persistence paid off. They managed to capture incriminating conversations between Gotti and his underboss, Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano, discussing various criminal activities, including murders and racketeering. These recordings, coupled with Gravano's decision to turn state's witness, provided the prosecution with a powerful case against John Gotti. Sammy Gravano's testimony was a turning point. As Gotti's trusted underboss, his decision to cooperate with authorities not only sealed Gotti's fate, but also exposed the inner workings of the Gambino family and the mafia at large. On April 2, 1992, after a trial that captured national attention, John Gotti was found guilty on all charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Gotti's conviction marked the end of an era for the Gambino crime family. His downfall not only signaled a significant victory for law enforcement in their battle against organized crime, but also left the Gambino family in disarray. The void left by Gotti's imprisonment led to internal power struggles and increased scrutiny from authorities, weakening the family's influence and control. With John Gotti's imprisonment in 1992, the Gambino crime family faced a period of uncertainty and instability. The once powerful organization found itself in turmoil, as law enforcement efforts intensified and internal power struggles threatened to tear the family apart. John Gotti's brother, Peter Gotti, was named the acting boss, tasked with the difficult job of maintaining control over the family and its operations. Peter Gotti's leadership was marked by a quieter and less aggressive style compared to his brother John. However, his tenure was fraught with challenges. Law enforcement agencies had shifted their focus to dismantling organized crime families, and Peter Gotti's involvement in the family's operations made him a prime target. He faced multiple indictments, including charges related to racketeering, extortion, and plotting to kill informants. In 2003, Peter Gotti was arrested and later convicted on multiple charges, including attempting to extort money from the actor Steven Seagal. His imprisonment left the Gambino family without a clear leader, sparking further internal disputes. The void left by Peter Gotti's removal from power allowed other members to rise, leading to a period of shifting alliances and unstable leadership. With Peter Gotti behind bars, the Gambino family turned to Domenico Cefalu, a low-profile but influential member, to lead the family. Cefalu's approach marked a departure from the aggressive, high-profile tactics of the past. He focused on keeping a low profile and rebuilding the family's strength through traditional mafia activities while avoiding unnecessary conflicts with law enforcement. During the mid-2010s, Frank Calli, who was seen as a bridge between the American Mafia and the Sicilian Mafia, emerged as an acting boss. Known for his diplomatic style and business acumen, Calli worked alongside Cefalu to strengthen the family's ties to Sicilian counterparts and maintain the Gambino's influence in New York's underworld. Despite the shared leadership dynamic, Calli's assassination in 2019 outside his Staten Island home shocked both the underworld and the public. Despite the challenges and violent episodes, Domenico Cefalu continued to maintain a significant role in the Gambino family's operations, steering the family towards a more cautious and strategic approach. Cefalu's leadership reflects the ongoing adaptability of the Gambino family, ensuring its survival and influence in the ever-changing landscape of organized crime. As the years have passed, the name Gambino has become synonymous with power, loyalty, and fear. From the cobbled streets of Palermo to the high-rise buildings of Manhattan, the story of the Gambino crime family is one of survival against all odds. They've faced betrayals, indictments, and the relentless pursuit of law enforcement, yet their influence remains woven into the fabric of New York's underworld. Even today, their name evokes respect and fear, a testament to the enduring legacy left behind by generations of ruthless ambition. But behind the allure of power and the whispers of respect, the legacy of the Gambino crime family is also a tale of darkness and destruction. For every dollar made, lives have been lost. Families have been torn apart by addiction, violence, and extortion. The shadow of the mafia has cast a long, dark cloud over communities, leaving scars that may never heal. The Gambino family's pursuit of power has brought fear and suffering, as their reach extended beyond the underworld, infiltrating businesses, unions, and even the justice system. While the headlines have faded and the spotlight has shifted, the story of the Gambino crime family is far from over. In the shadows, deals are still made, alliances are forged, and power is carefully guarded. As long as there are fortunes to be made and secrets to be kept, the spirit of the Gambino family will continue to shape the world of organized crime. This is not just the story of a crime family, it's a legacy that endures. But it is also a warning. The allure of power comes with a price, and the scars left by the Gambino name are a stark reminder that the true cost of the mafia's influence is borne by those who suffer in its wake.